Hi, and welcome to the Art of Fatherhood. I'm lying outside under a blue sky on this autumn day, and I'm taking time to think, because I'm preparing myself to spend leisure well. Or I am doing it, actually. And that's the topic of today, is how to educate our children to participate in leisure in a fine and divine way. But before we do that, we need to talk about how important education is. Let's go this way. Now, animals educate their young by instinct. We see animals training their offspring to survive in order to perpetuate the species. Yeah, we know that birds teach their young ones how to fly, and bears teach their cubs how to forage. Well, with man, it's somewhat similar, but a bit different. We also, by nature, want to educate our children so they survive and to perpetuate the species, but there's this element of reason that happens with man. Man has reason, and therefore, as parents, we are obligated to not only give our kids skills, but also to develop and train and educate their reason. Now, there's lots of philosophy out there on educating children and how that needs to be done. That's a different topic. Today I simply want to look at one aspect of that, and it's given to us by Aristotle. Now, Aristotle, in his book Politics, book 8, he says that we need to educate our children for leisure. Well, what is going on here? Educating them to spend their time for recreation? What's he talking about? So here's his idea, and I think it's very good. He says, if a city is in time of peace and its citizens are not educated to spend their peaceful time in a fine and divine way, well, then they end up in debauchery. And that debauchery ends up in vices, and people that are gripped by vices, by bad habits, end up weakening the state. So that if that city gets attacked, after their people have been in a time of peace but haven't been spending that peaceful time very well, the city falls. So, interesting concept, educating for leisure. So now we bring this to our own children. How are we to educate our children for leisure so that when they are in this peaceful time and they're not under stress and duress, that they're spending it well and not falling into addictions and vices and mindlessness? Really something that we need to think about and isn't thought about so much in our education. Now, I think there's a few ways to do this. But before we go into a couple strategies, I think we need to look at the premise behind this. When we are educating our children for leisure, we are educating them to love what is beautiful. That is key. To love beauty for beauty's sake. Not to seek after beauty. I mean, we all do this. We all love what is beautiful. We love beautiful art and beautiful things and beautiful sunsets. We love that. But we need to raise our children not to pursue what is beautiful so that they can take it and possess it and make it their own and use it. Rather, train our boys and our girls to seek what is beautiful simply because it is beautiful, and to love it for that reason and to protect it. This is one of the things, here's a little rabbit trail. This is one of the things that I train my boys, is that women are absolutely beautiful, and they are to be protected and cherished and loved for the beauty that they are. They're not there for us to come and own and take and use for our own gratification. They are something beautiful that God has given us, and we are to cherish and protect them. That type of attitude, right? So how do we nurture this love of beauty in our children? How do we educate our children so that at times of leisure they are pursuing what is beautiful and not doing the opposite? I mean, addictions is an obvious opposite, but what about playing video games in their leisure time, or just mindlessly watching television, or sitting on a smartphone doing mindless chat for hours? I mean, It's mindless stuff, and some of it becomes addicting. Here are a few strategies that we've employed in our family. The first one I think is very obvious. Aristotle thought it also was obvious. Simply the arts. The arts help us to appreciate what is beauty and to recognize beauty when we see it. And that's the visual arts, dance, and theater, poetry, all those fine arts. If we don't, Aristotle says, if we aren't trained in the art of, let's say, drawing, it's difficult for us to know the difference between what is beautiful and what is not so beautiful. I have a perfect example of this in my own life. My wife was raised up in a musical family. I was not. When we were dating, 20 years old or so, she would take me to a symphony. She'd be enraptured by the symphony, absolutely loving it. She could hear the instruments and the intonations and all this stuff. And I was asleep beside her because I just didn't get it. I had no musical training, I had no musical ear, I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't appreciate the beauty for the beauty that it was. So the arts is a good strategy in this sense. But I think we can go further than Aristotle and also use contemplation. Big word, contemplation. How do you, we barely even contemplate as adults, but how do we get our kids to contemplate, to think? Well, I think it's simply recognizing the opposite first. Our children are in a society that loves to amuse them, to entertain them. They want to be amused. I used to teach in the classroom, and I would tell my students right off the top, I am not here to entertain you. I'm sorry. I am a teacher. I'm here to teach you and do it well. I'm not your amusement for the day. Our children are being trained to be amused, which is the opposite of musing, of thinking. So we need to provide opportunities for our children to just be and to think, whether that's in nature or for us on Friday mornings, our children go to the chapel and spend 15 minutes to half an hour in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and they're just there being and praying and being with our Blessed Lord. I asked my son the other day, I said, so what actually do you do when I send you to adoration? Do you pray the rosary? Do you read your Bible? What do you do? He says, Dad, well, I know I'm supposed to do that stuff, but sometimes I just want to sit there and just think. Yeah, that's excellent. Just be there. Learn to contemplate. And in this contemplation, as a strategy, I think it'll move them away from amusement to loving beauty. One last strategy. Beauty for beauty's sake. And one thing that is beauty is friendship and relationship. And we find that essentially in the family. And so my wife and I make a concerted effort to bring our children together in dialogue to build a relationship in the family. And we do this at supper time. We sit down at the table. My wife comes with an agenda of questions to ask the children. So we have a dialogue and we get to know each other. And again, this is a great way to spend their leisure time with friends, being together in constructive dialogue and learning about each other. Educating for leisure's sake. Educating for leisure for beauty's sake. So I challenge you, if you haven't thought of this before, stick it into your game plan. You are the primary educator of your children. How are you educating your children to spend their leisure well? If you've enjoyed this talk, please check out my website, artoffatherhood.ca. You can check through the other videos. Even join me in my Thomas Aquinas domestic project, where we're taking the teachings of the great Dr. St. Thomas Aquinas and bringing them home into family life. That is a great task. So, God bless you. Semper Fidelis. Remain always faithful.